In the name of the God, most merciful and most compassionate, ladies and gentlemen, greetings all. On behalf of His Excellency Jamal Hassan Swaidi, the manager of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies, I would like to welcome you in our venue. Today we have the pleasure of the meeting of the Arab world in light of regional and global challenges, presented by His Excellency Ahmed Aboul, the Secretary General of the Arab League. His Excellency Aboul General is the Secretary General of the Arab League before being elected Secretary General in July 1916, and he was also the deputy of the from 1990 from Egypt from 2004 2011. His Excellency previously served as the permanent representative of Egypt to the United Nations from 1999 to 1940. Between the 1992 and 1996, he was Egypt's ambassador to Italy, Macedonia, and San Marino, and representative to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in Rome. He served as the chief cabinet of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt twice, from 1989 to 1992, and from 1996 to 1999 he was political advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 1989 to 1990. Prior holding this position, His Excellency Aboul was Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations. He held the economic bachelor degree from Ain Shams, and now it's my pleasure to invite him to deliver his speech. Good morning. My dear friend Jamal Swaidi, the manager of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I feel happy, enormously happy, for being here in this morning at this center to talk to you concerning about the Arab world in the light of regional and global changes. This is not the first time that I visit this center. I've been to this center last year, and based on that visit, I agreed with His Excellency Jamal that today it's a talk. I don't call it a lecture. It's like a talk prepared in a format of a lecture, but it's mostly as a talk. The Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research is one of those platforms and cultural platforms in the Arab world. And this center has been successful in terms of establishing its name as a conference for strategical studies. The area or the venue of strategic studies is based on the convention that there is a requirement, there is a need in the Arab world, in the different countries, to those similar venues of similar platforms like this center, to look at the changes and find out what's going on in the Arab world. And there is a tremendous pressure on the Arab world that has been going on for many decades. The developments in the world and in general. Personally, I believe that the right decision for the future, the halfway has been taken in terms of enhancing our interests, Arabs, and enlarging our interests in those changes. So whether good or to prevent the harm or utilize the good, the right reading for what's going on put us in the right trajectory to do the right thoughts, mental and action. What I'm talking about today is a personal reading for what's going on in the world and in the regional, based on what I think I have an experience that extended in the diplomatic arena and realm and the military realm, to follow up the international affairs, whether looking forward or reflecting or practicing and involving at the same time. In fact, my conviction that the importance of this center, based on when I was a small diplomat in the Egyptian Ministry of Affairs, I was following up what is being issued by the other strategical centers, particularly in the center in UK, AAS. That center at that time was established in 1985. When I was assigned as a diplomat outside Egypt. My income was very small and tiny, and my salary was very small. And I started with my wife. She is accompanying me, Miss Layla. So I took part in the strategical center. I took part in that, and I used to pay a big fees, $25 per year, so I could receive all the publications. When those publications, I would read it from the leaf to the leaf, and they used to issue 4 public main papers or publications that is issued every month, and there is survival that is issued once every month, and there is something called the strategical survey, and then there is strategic balance. I used to memorize them by heart. And I believe, and this center, the Emirates Center for Strategical, is similar to the one in UAE. It contributes to opening the horizon for strategical studies, and to study the something amazing. So I believe this center in UAE plays a very vital role, sends a very important message, and it has to be, and all its publications is quite important and vital and crucial. The most important lesson that I have learned to predict and foresee the trajectory, the international patterns, that predicting those patterns is very difficult. Whoever would think that the conflicts of the first century will end to the defeat of the European powers. We've seen after 1945, I'm trying to preface to get to the Arab world, for the Arab world and the current events, and it's difficult to predict that what could happen in the world today, whether it's in the international realm or the regional realm, or in the Arabic world. At that time, in 1945, Germany was destroyed, and there was the establishment of the United Nations. They had the veto from 4 countries, had the right to vote or veto, and with the emergence of we've seen the emergence of US and USR. Indeed, there was lots of studies that had been indicating many centuries that the USR or Russia, Russian and USA, they are the main powers that will emerge. And personally, I thought something Tony Baer, the British historian, wrote from Alexis de Tocqueville, the socialists from France, and the very historian who visited to the US in 1830, and he wrote a book about his prediction that Russia and USA will emerge and will dominate the world. And indeed, after 1945, there we witnessed the emergence of USA and the USSR. But who would expect that after the Second World War, the Allies will have a will involve in a Cold War? Who would have thought that USSR in December 1971 will collapse, will explode and collapse? Who would have thought? I served in the USSR for 3 years, and the USSR military might looked like enormous and great, and it was unimaginable that this military might collapse. But indeed, it internally collapsed under the pressure of the Cold War, under the pressure of the competition with the USSR. Who would have thought that the China in 1945 or 75 or even 85, who would have thought that China will emerge with the way it emerged, that the way it looks now? Some think that this is the purchase power is the strongest economy. But indeed, China will in 2030, China will dominate economically. So prediction is very difficult and very tricky. I believe we can do nothing but to discuss, speculate, and present thoughts and ideas for future without saying anything for sure or say anything for certainty, because we can't know anything for sure. In fact, that the most important characteristics for today is that what is called that uncertainty, and that flow that impacts the changes in the world. In the Cold War, there was pillars and foundations that we can rely on to predict the main players with certainty of certainty. But only for the last 3 decades after the Cold War, we witnessed the dominance of the US, and that gave us a direction. The US, from the 19th till the last a few years, they used the unipolar moment. The dominance of the US, the unmatched and dominance of the US that we witnessed for the last 30 years. And then the US is no longer that way. Based on that, we have ambiguous future, and we can't predict, and we can't foresee. And something that we can see it now with the big powers in the West. In my point of view, there are 2 fundamental elements for that causes uncertainty on the world. And the first element is about the international structure that we live today. Is it polar system? Many polars, many systems, like Kissinger, once he wrote. Henry Kissinger, the Minister of Affairs of the US, when he wrote in the 60s and the 50s, talked about a world has different poles. From his experience in the European arena, when he wrote, he was very eloquent when he wrote that book. He talked about what 1850s, when he called the concept of Europe, or the harmonious of Europe that emerged after the war. Is the world is our world is similar to that one? Can we see the US and China and Russia and the UN and India, for instance, and EU? Will we see the American power and the China and US will compete like they competed earlier? what the role that Russia will play. I always think about Russia. Russia is is a giant military and a very powerful and very limited economy. The USR has very limited economical power. Its economical power cannot exceed 15% of the US. Therefore, what Russia can play, what type of role, and the relationship between Russia and China is, from the first glance, a strategical relationship and ties between Russia and USR, because they could see there is a common enemy, which is the USA and the Western world. Will there be chaos in the world? Those are all questions that we can talk and speculate and write on for months and years and thousand pages that we can write and speculate about those questions. However, the reality and on the field is that the thing that determines the future, this uncertainty that we can witness in all over the world. What we know, what we can detect with some extent of certainty, that the dominance of the US after is almost over. The US dominance is over. I believe it's over. The US dominance of the world is over. And the reason is because the fundamental changes in the USA itself that pushes it forward to eliminate and drop the world dominance. When one of those variable is that the US society have become convinced that the US dominance does not justify the burden and the cost that they have paid. And that kind of tendency in the American people that we could see can be called the withdrawal tendency from the dominating the world is from the Obama era. We've seen the US, and for the first time, thinks about the cost. The US President Trump, at the moment when he was elected, when he was inaugurated, he said, Europe should contribute financially on its share as is dictated by the Atlantic Constitution or decree, and the US will not defend Europe. It will not defend Europe anymore from 1945 to 1995. Those 40 years, US was defending the US. So they say we no longer can defend you anymore. That doesn't mean that we will not be isolated like the Cold War. We know that the US was isolated from all changes for the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. And when the First World War, and it contributed and presented the idea of the United Nations, it wasn't a member of that union because the Congress that isolated itself refused that the US take part or become a member in the United Nations, and that is the reason why it led to the Second World War, because the lack of the lack of the US. Therefore, there is no deter for any member that tries to dominate the world in Europe, which was Germany. However, the moment of the US is over. That doesn't mean that the century won't be the century won't change. I don't say that. Although there are indicators and evidence that there is the artificial intelligence, for instance, is more advanced in China compared to the US. That the China that is emerging has the power to grow and that would exceed the US technology. We have to look at that here. This is the uncertainty that I'm talking about. I've been informed by history that the moments of changes is the most critical moment and the most vulnerable to more conflicts, and the reason that it has been always new emerging powers that wants to emerge and continue to grow, and there are powers on the top that prevents and slow down the growth of other powers. And this dynamic, this mechanism represents an ideal environment for conflict. And I believe today this tendency in China and the US, and you can see it in the role that played by Russia for itself. The principles of the relationship between countries all over the world and currently and on those days indicate that the interest by all over the world, by the countries, by philosophers and by thinkers, or even by that the people who practitioners, that they talk about the personality of methodical character, general mythical creature, General Theodotus, which is a mythical creature, used to be a general in the Latin army in the Peloponnese War. In the era before the birth of Jesus, 1300 to 1004, he wrote about the war, Peloponnese War between Sparta and Athens. And this man said that the Spartan power, notice that the Athens are growing fast, and Sparta had to slow down that growth, prevents it from taking over its power. Therefore, that's the cause of war between two countries. And he said he had a quotation that they still looking at those quotations in the all international studies, that the emerging powers pushes the dominance power into war, and many things have been written and many studies have been published. Therefore, there is uncertainty here. Therefore, we don't know the relationship between the US and China will lead to what. Personally, I believe that the intense competition will be not today, after 20 or 30 years, before the end of the century. It has been said that dungeon jumping, the major character or the mythical character in the social party in China, advised all leaders not to conflict or to engage in a war with the West unless you are ready for that. So we can see China interacting wisely with that not to be careful, not to confront the USA. I believe I have many examples about the validity of the Theodotus theory. One of them is one of the Soviet Germany, when it started to compete with UK and dominating the world or the oceans. The UK engaged in a war against Germany between the UK and German fleets in the beginning of the 20th century. There is a moment that we need to examine, and we have to be careful between what we can see between China and the US, and therefore we could see the US relocating the USA leaves the USA, the Middle East. The US hasn't left the US, the Middle East, but it relocating in the Asia, and relocating its powers and their fleets because it's considering because it's considering China, and Russia is taking advantage of this relocating to present itself at the heart of the old world, which is south of Europe and Middle East, and there is allies between China and Russia, and I believe that in the West they might try to achieve an idea that looks absolutely crazy, to join Russia to Europe to face China. Oh, this is like a bizarre idea, but those are ideas. This is type of uncertainty. We cannot say anything for sure. There is no doubt that those variables that we look at in the international world place the Middle East in a very critical situation. The Middle East is at the heart of a competition between different worlds. This competition will escalate in the future, and that we can see today clearly. And we have to look at read these variables carefully, because related to the future of us as Arab. And here I would like to point out that the relocating of the US, as I said earlier, from the Middle East, might tempt other international attempts to cross the red line in a way that hasn't been, in an unprecedented way, and in a very bold way that could get to the point of bullying. There is bullying. We would see it here in the Middle East. We've seen it in the way of the Iranian regime and the invasion of in the Gulf, particularly that we saw September and August and Julio, attacking oil facilities. There is something wrong that we need to end, and we need to put an end to it. And today we can see it in Turkey, in Syria, and also lately in Libya. In the fact, to some extent, we are being asked as Arab, because the international Arabic country has withdrawn in certain regions in the Arabic world. In other words, the East has been destroyed, and no one can deny that Iraq has been destroyed from 2003, and destroyed by a mistake that was done by Saddam Hussein when he invaded Kuwait, and in Syria, then, and allowing Atlantic allies to get to Libya. All those mistakes that led to that the Arabic world weakens. Some of the Arabic countries were eliminated. Some other Arabic countries have no dominance on their own land. Therefore, we could see the intervention of Iran on some Arabic countries. We've seen the Turkey intervention in some Arabic countries. We've seen the withdrawal of the Palestinian case, that it used to be our top priority. We've seen Israel rejects negotiation with Palestine and giving them whatever left, the crumbs of the US, of the Palestine. And Israel said the situation will remain as it is, a complete dominance of the occupied land, and Palestinians will have nothing at all. And the idea of two countries living side by side has also withdrawn, and this is a result of what happened after 2011, which was, unfortunately, personally, I think, and I repeat on all platforms, there wasn't a spring, it was a destruction to the Arab. And I can defend my thoughts and I can present my idea, but also I will not pardon the Arab leaders at that time from, I'm still holding them responsible for the Arab leaders because they hit this wall that motivated their people. It was a mistake that we paid high price for. I see that the conventional way of thinking is no longer viable with a situation that's unconventional. These strategies that we relied on the last centuries have to change because the situations are constantly changing. And there is no way, from my point of view, that we have enhanced our powers to face the threats and challenges in a world that can be more chaotic, with no rules and regulations, with no traditions that we should be considered. This means that our power is our way out. That doesn't, but however, and this is a big however, it's important, it's very crucial that we have to have allies. In any strategy, in any security strategy, successful strategy is based on enhancing and having more allies. The allies with the outside world should be based on a very strong foundation, based on a common security plan. And this is the end my speech by this point. If we have the first element of the uncertainty world that we can see it on the world because of lack of stability in the world. So the second element belongs to the chaos or instability factors. I'm saying there is uncertainty. Nobody could predict the future. Nobody could foresee the relationship between Russia and the US and the EU and even our local. We don't know where is it going. Nobody could predict or foresee what the Arab League and the Arab are going. Where are they going? Turkey, why it behaves the way it does? Why Iran behaves the way it does? Why Israel refuses settlement with Palestine? Those are elements. The second element, as it has been said, the chaos elements. What is the chaos elements? They are a group of phenomena that interact with one another within the society on the whole planet, that causes an enormous amount of chaos and panic. And one of the most important phenomena is the technological development. The technological development that we can see, the phone that we carry with us, is a late technological advancement and development in the 19th into artificial intelligence and transforms the humanity. And this is the first point: technological development, the climate change, the immigration, the pressure of immigration. Each element of those will have an impact on our society. The shock that caused by the globalization on the balance of the internal societies, the globalization, for example, when we see in Davos in 2017, the US president that talks about the free world, about the free market, about the relationship, commercial relationship between the many countries, said no for globalization. And the US will pursue its own interest first. The US first. And he says, and a Chinese president, ironically, on the same session, he talks about the globalization. So the globalization impact is something has shaken the middle class, and this middle class has its influence. And in the US, it imposed its point of view in the last election in 2020. Nobody can know for sure the robots automation, the chaos it could cause, artificial intelligence, unemployment, the cheap labors, the machine facing human, job vacancies. It's possible that many percentage of human beings working everywhere, they could any moment lose their job by artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence with the human could lead to many thousands lose their jobs. Many people, millions might lose their jobs, and this could impact the balance of our society. We detect today a concern by the middle class that Atlantic about this technology, and that can be translated into people taking part or demonstrations, because the middle class is all over the world, and the threat by technological and artificial intelligence could change or challenge the middle class, like Chile, for example. Chile is an advanced country. It has the free economy. France, the yellow land that has emerged the last weeks and months. The stress that we can see in Italy, that there is pressure by immigrants and by people, for example, Major and Vienna. And there is a phenomena that dominates the world because of the distance of the technological advancement, or the fear of immigrants, or because of the other situation, which is immigrants. There is also another reason, a cause of concern, which is the telecommunication technology between the countries. This telecom technology can target people and formulate a point through algorithm and data by having a directed campaign to some certain people. I believe I have the story of the social media and the story, because I found that social media, it really causes concern to human beings. Personally, I've done that. I have distanced myself from social media. I told my friends, you can have WhatsApp on my phone, and they have everything on all applications on my phone. Within a week, I was really drained by the number of messages that I've received. So I shut down. I have a wife. My wife over there, sitting there. She is on social media, sitting on social media from 6 morning. She doesn't even make me coffee. She's busy with social media till 10 p.m. because she says you need to know what's going on in the world through social media. In fact, social media, it could be beneficial. It could be beneficial to some extent. However, it's very harmful at the same time. It has a very big negative if it hasn't been used wisely. Social media can be used by a villain and could be used to destroy societies. It's called in Egypt the fourth generation war. The media war is named in Egypt, and so on. This is the result of the advanced technology that in everybody's pocket in this session. Concerning the climate, I can see the world is moving towards to a point of no return. And this moment, we will have, if we get to that point of no return, it will be too late. The experts of climate say that if we get to the point of no return in 2035, in the last week in Madrid, in Spain, we had the conference of combating the carbon, to eliminate the carbon emission. And that conference didn't achieve what had been thought for or hoped for. In the developing countries, and many other countries will pay high price if the world is not aware of the climate change and the impact of the climate change on this planet. I read 2 years back an article that personally I was panicked, and concerning the Gulf. They said that the temperature will not be less than 50 in winter or in summer, and maybe more. This is very concerning to everyone. A country like Egypt, Delta might sink any moment. Delta is the Egyptian people live. It can sink any moment. The desert, the western desert or the coast will be hit by a drought that will lead to a situation that is really cause of concern, because our water as Arab, we come from other region. Half of the curbs and harvest from outside. So if anything goes wrong with the world in terms of drought or climate change, we will be ultimately impacted. Terrorism. It has been said in the studies that we've read that the coastal area, Boko Haram, and those people who claim to be Muslims, that people who fight in Niger and Mali, and those terrorists who fight in those countries, fundamentally they belong to the drought. Therefore, young people are unemployed and they go to engage and they become terrorists. And the migrations from Africa to to North Africa through Libya and to Europe, and passing the Mediterranean, and sometimes drowning in the Mediterranean. I'm talking about the Mediterranean. It's a result of the climate change and the accumulations of problems that they have been facing. So the climate change is, and in addition to the technological development, is something that we need to take into consideration and something we need to predict. Finally, the migration. Migration, it has been said that there are 20 million people working outside the world, outside the Arabic world. And there is a claim in the Western region that it's a tracking point that we have to keep. I'm using an English word because the Arabic is shocking. Purity, naqa, purity of their society. Because when Arab go, they get shocked and they don't want to change their culture, they don't want to change their mindset, despite the fact that I've read, and I'm prepared, and I can face many Western officers that I told them, you contributed to the Arabic Spring, and you came and you visited, you talked, you supported the Arabic country, you encouraged Arab people to revolt against the leaders and regimes. And when we have the civil war in our countries and our people were refugees to your country, you closed the doors. And they closed the door in major and in many European countries. They closed the door for refugees who flooded the influx of refugees to Europe. And then we can see kind of negotiation, and Turkey is using that as an element for their negotiation. So immigration is something that changes the Arabic world, and is bizarrely, I'm holding myself responsible for what I'm going to say. All those countries, all those European countries, want to preserve the number of population and increase their population so it can compete with geopolitical between two wings of the world. Therefore, it has been said the miracle allowed Syrian people to come over to Berlin, because in fact that Berlin, in the middle of Germany, suffered lack of population. German wanted to have people. They wanted Caucasian race, Syrian people, to live in Berlin. The same in Italy. Italy, they wanted people. They wanted from Tunisia, but they don't want from Africa. The same with France. They are taking Moroccan and Tunisian and Algerian. So I claim that Japan, that the witnessing a reduction of population will seek for immigrants, will open the door for immigrants. China also will open the door for immigrants, because people are getting old and they are not able of producing people. Therefore, those situations that we are going to be faced in the near future, technology, climate change, migrations, and the most crucial element is when we choose our kids, when our kids choose, bizarrely and sadly, Harvard graduate, the best European universities, the best American universities, or the best of our own universities. When they graduate, thousands of our kids immigrate to work in the West, and that they are encouraged to immigrate to the West. In other words, here we can say, with 100,000 of scientists and experts from the Arab world immigrate on annual basis from 8 countries, from 8 European countries every year. 8 Arabic countries lose 8,000 of thinkers and experts. When we see this phenomenon, we talked about two main elements, which is the uncertainty in the Arabic world, and the elements or the factors of changes, which is technology and climate change and immigration. We see, and we are in front of an interesting, a very angry river. We don't know where this angry river will take us. The biggest questions in the Arabic world is, what should we do in front of those changes and variables that we have no idea where it will lead us to. So there are many things that can be said. However, I would wrap it up by saying that we need to have our unity as Arabic. We have to retain our unity as Arabic countries to face the uncertainty. And any regime, any collective system have to reach to an agreement. In the Arabic League, the Arab House, the nation, the country, the Arabic countries need a collective security. This collective security requires an agreement on the priorities. We, as Arab, unfortunately, our priorities varies from a country to another. In other words, in the West, on the Atlantic Ocean, in the Arabic countries in the West, we have a vision for our security. Algeria and Morocco, they have their own vision for security, and they have their own thoughts and ideas about and priorities. They believe in the Arabic League, no doubt, and believe in the Arabic nation, and believe in the Islamic world. However, their regional security is determined by their own vision and priorities. In the Gulf is different. In Oman is different. In the ocean, in the Indian Ocean, the east is different. The middle, the Nile River is different. So today the priorities, we see Turkey place a law in the Turkish parliament today to allow the parliament for the government to send army forces to Libya. Turkey left Libya in 1911 and after 100 years returns to Libya. We've seen a country like our neighbor, the Arabic in Africa, tries to prevent water from 140 million Arabic African, Sudan and Egypt. There is something, a cause of reason. Okay. Three minutes. In a very clear quotation, I should say that Turkey and Israel and Turkey represent a very major threats to the Arabic security in a different shape and forms. And I believe in each country they differ from one another. The Arabic state, the Palestinian state should remain our top priority. The Iranian and Turkey threats, they have impacted in Syria in particular. The Syrian threats is quite clear at the end. I should say that I talk about the specific threats, and I could add to that many other threats. The nuclear arm race in Iran is seeking a nuclear weapon, and the Turkey president talked about last week about why can't Turkey have nuclear power, an independent nuclear power. All these situations impose that or urge us to think about all elements, all variables, even things that unthinkable or things that we have never considered before, and we have to be bold and courageous to face those challenges and think outside the box. We have to deal with what's going on with imagination and creativity. UAE indeed is an example for the way of thinking and reflecting, for boldness and creativity in performance and innovation and advocating their trends. Thank you very much. Would like to thank His Excellency Ahmed Gheit, the Secretary General of the Arab League, for this lecture, for this valuable talk, as he pointed out. It's very exciting talk. You've addressed many challenges and changes that we see in the Arabic world and in the international world that is motivated by different challenges, whether economy or technological or artificial intelligence or even a demographical change or environment. This in our region and the impact of those challenges on our region and the importance of reclaiming the collective security, that in addition to pointing out at the importance of foreseeing future and proposing the unconventional solutions for any challenges that we might face in the future, and the role that the strategical centers play, and in addition to the in addition to pointing out the role that we play in the Arabic War in our Emirate Center of Strategies and Research, now we open the floor for discussion. I would like people who would like to ask a question or have a comment, kindly make it brief as brief as possible. Kindly make it as brief as possible. Thank you for your excellency. Indeed, you've enriched your lecture with very valuable information and you have very analytical vision for the Arabic world. However, there is some questions that we can sum it up. We have one question. What should we do? What I'm concerned about is the internal Arabic world. Isn't it time for us to the Arabic League that we should propose a solution for the Syrian solution? Isn't it time for us to talk about can't we talk about our internal issue, the Libyan? We cry and whine about the return of Turkey to the region or Iran presence in Syria. Isn't it time? Isn't the Arabic collaboration and partnership? You talked about an example that I cannot comprehend, that the American invasion to the Iraq in 2003 belongs to because of the Iraqi invasion to Kuwait. I cannot understand this. Can you clarify? The Libya is very miserable. The situation in Libya is very miserable because neighboring countries like Algeria and Tunisia and Egypt, those countries are afraid of Libya. They are not concerned about Libya. They are afraid of Libya. Thank you very much. Concerning your question, what is the relationship between 2003, the invasion of the American to the Iraqi? It's clear relationship. The moment when America invaded, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, the situation deteriorated. So much so that with this region was invited people from 35 countries to come and to intervene, and that allies allowed and freed Kuwait. When Kuwait was freed and liberated at the end of March or beginning of March 1991, Iraq was under a siege and under international siege, and with the 2001 led to Iraq was targeted another time because the weakest element. So this is the relationship between 2003 and 1919 about the moment for us to unite that Syria retain its position in the Arabic world or liberate Syria. This is why we are divided. The Arab people are divided, there are certain countries that support and there are some other countries that object. I will share with you something easy for me to convey the idea. There is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iraqi come to the Arabic League and he talks about, isn't it time for Syria to come back to the Arabic League? But nobody responds. We sit in a meeting, we discuss our issue. Someone talks about, isn't it time for the return of Syria to the Arabic League? Nobody says anything, and we don't follow up with that. So I mean, when you desire to ensure the return of Syria to the Arabic League, we have to a country like, or a group of countries, or an assignment by the Arabic or invitation to the Arabic League to open communication with Syria to see whether they are interested in return. No one is taking actions, and I'm not unprepared as the Secretary General of Arabic League. I'm not prepared to propose that as an initiative, because the situation, as I see it, is not indicating that there is a complete maturity from the Arabic world to welcome the Syrian back to the Arabic League. And concerning Libya also, what happened in 2011 and in a civil war in the Arabic world, and that civil war wasn't in one level, it was in many variable and many levels. For example, the trends of the people who claim to be Muslims, there is a group of terrorists, civil war paid by the West, and he says, why can't you reconsider Westphalia was a war between Protestant and Catholic, and they want to have a war between the West want to have war between Shia and Sunnah. Therefore, the war in the Arabic world in many variables, in many different levels, and this division led to this. This is kind of shaky situation that we are all suffering and struggling with. Last two questions, please. Greetings, everybody. So I replied to your greetings, but nobody replied to my greetings in the morning. So there is no doubt that today, your lecture today focused on the political reading for the current situation that we see in our region in particular. However, you've said something interesting, quotation. You said something interesting that the proper reading for the situation puts us in the right trajectory. So this is a very good quotation, but I believe that if we have a proper, accurate, and deep and profound reading for the economical situation in the Arabic world, on the Arabic in general, I believe that Russia and China and India are countries that are emerging powerfully, and they will no longer be a conventional power. They will become very influencing in the international arena, particularly in the deterioration of the American dominance. In the Arabic world, we have the economical powers, very important economical powers, because this war that we've seen is because they want to dominate our economical powers in the GCC. The biggest oil reserve is the biggest oil and gas reserve is in the GCC, and because of in the Iraq, and that was the reason of the war. The conflict in Syria because of the gas, the Syrian seaport, which will go to Russia, the conflict in Libya between an agreement between Turkey and Russia on the Libyan gas, and also the strategical situation. Therefore, the economical reading is that leads us to understanding this conflict. In addition to the human reserves, we have high population. People who get, both countries who get older, they require younger people. And also the financial wealth and assets. And the financial assets are very important, and it could serve to obtain some jobs. We have those assets. What we lack is the unity. We have a state of divisions. The Arabic League should have studies to identify the reason and diagnose the situation and find out why we are divided. Why we are divided. And we have those wealth, the resources and foundations. In fact, I congratulate you for this comment. Very insightful comment. And you could see what beyond political action. The economical element is no doubt, there is no doubt that we need to take it into consideration. The UAE in 1945, the US, the economical production comes from the USA. Now it went down to 25. The China is taking the lead, and indeed, there is a possibility that Europe will become 25, China will become 25, US 25, and the rest of the world, including China and Brazil, will become 25 also in terms of production. The Arab world, there is great and enormous power and resources. Your talk about the attempt of controlling the oil and gas and oil and using this is not for the advantage or for the interest of the US. It's not for their interest, as you said. Russia is entering in Syria for the oil line, for the gas line. Turkey is entering the Middle East because it targets the oil lines or the gas lines, and also the oil fields in the depth of in the sea. It's a tragedy that we are facing as Arabs, as you said, as the division, the Arabic division. The Arabic division, as we are waiting for the knife to hit the vein, to wake up, to hit our neck, to wake up. The Arabic region has potentials. We have high population, and we are capable to respond to the challenges. We need determination. We need determination. The Arabic League is a formula. Is a formula. It's a framework. It includes everyone. But the Arabic League alone can't do much, can't launch those initiatives. That is up to the governments, and the government should take the first step and take the first initiative within a strategy. So I believe I talked about more than one Arabic summit about uniting the concepts of Arabic concepts, uniting the concepts of the Arabic security. And I tried tried to discuss this issue in our league. The problem is we are 22 partners, and each partner has his own vision for the international regional security. Last question, kindly, we have only 40 seconds for the question and the answer. Thank you for your Excellency. You talked about the threats, then the Arabic project, that the Project Arabic are under threats in the region. The Israel threats and Iranian threats and Turkey threats. At the last, we had the Kuala Lumpur summit that we invited all those, the un-Arabic project supported by Qatar and by the Muslim Brotherhood. The objects or the Kuala Lumpur summit was to have a space, another international space for the Muslim Brotherhood, and also find a structure and a Islamic summit that threatens the Arabic world. And this is another project for Turkey. There was Arbakan. He established the other Arabic and Islamic organization in the 90s. Now Erdogan is establishing Mahathir wa Tamim. Don't you see that it's time in the what's coming on now in the Middle East, and the Iranian, Qatari, and Turkey support that threats the internal security and threats Egypt and GCC and threats Yemen and Iraq and threats Iraq. Don't you see, isn't it time to have a new vision, a new practical vision for the Arabic League and restructuring the Arabic League and placing new foundation pillars and involving the society in all that? This is a very good question. In developing and enhancing the Arabic League, however, is required, but the requirement of enhancing and developing is based on the Arabic countries, on the Arabic League, because there has been a talk between the Turkish Turkish president that said this tool, this organization, which is the Arabic League, is very weak and it stinks. It stinks. And Rouhani last year, he said this Arabic League stinks. When a president says this is our neighboring countries, Iran and Turkey, when you talk about our league that we stinks, then it's something they don't want to join. When we talk about rehabilitation, restructuring, supporting the Arabic League, we need to talk about this understanding that this one day it will be an international league, more effective, more capable, and it will have one Arabic determination and will work to the security Arabic. If we say that the Middle Arabic League, because I've been to many conferences in the Western world, they talk about a league or Middle Arabic League, and it means joining Israel and Turkey and Iran. We need to be careful. The Arabic League looks for enhancement, for reform, to rehabilitation and restructuring. But if I tell you, let me finish this point. If I tell you to establish one Arabic market allows great space for Arabic commercial, it took us 15 years and we couldn't get to a point to complete the vision. So there is something wrong with us as Arab. Thank you very much. Thanks, Your Excellency. At the end of this session, I would like to repeat the thanks on his behalf, Sanad al-Suwaidi, the manager of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research. I'd like to thank Aboul Gheit, His Excellency Aboul Gheit, the Secretary General of Arab League. I would like to thank you all. Until we meet in other session, thank you very much.